Welcome to the Kangaroo Leadership Podcast, where we only have leaders that demonstrate the traits of the kangaroo, which is being able to move forward in a thoughtful, courageous, empathetic, and continuous learning fashion. All of these people I have talked to previous to this, and they all have wonderful stories. Blanca is going to take us down maybe a little bit of fun, huh, Blanca? But we're also going to talk about some serious things too. And so as we go through this, as you know, it's freelance and a little bit of a wild ride, and we'll get down the right rabbit holes. But Blanca, thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. And thank you, David, for having me here today and Thanksgiving Eve 2024. My name is Blanca. I am the owner of Wounded Healer LLC. And Wounded Healers, we are people that we take very difficult seasons in our life, going down many rabbit holes of darkness. And we take all of these darker seasons to enable us and is our gasoline to help others improve the quality of life. I come from a household that was broken when I was a very young girl. It was my life was about my father and life after my father's tragic passing. My parents are Puerto Rican. I grew up, well, I didn't grow up. I was born in New York City, and the place where my parents moved to in search of a better life, in search for the American dream. This was back in the late 50s or early 60s when there was a big exodus of Puerto Ricans looking for a better things to do. And my father was no exception. My father was an adventurer, risk taker. He was in the military. He traveled the whole world. And being a math teacher in Puerto Rico was not enough for him. So he embarked in this mission of making things better for himself and his family. And he definitely conquered the American dream. And this was the age of mom stays home with the kids and dad goes out to work and provide for the family. And in a fateful day, my father's life was taken in his jewelry store. He was an owner of three different businesses. At that time, he was only 43 years old, and life was never the same again. My mother went into a deep depression and she never recovered from it. Later on, we found out that she had chronic untreated mental illnesses, and this was the time in life when in our culture, I'm Puerto Rican, in our culture, talking about the dead was a shh, you don't talk about the dead. Talking about mental health issues, it was another shush. It was a stereotype. Nobody wanted to confront it. And the definition of mental illness was crazy. If you are crazy, you don't have a life, your life is over, and they will use horse tranquilizers to supposedly cure people from illnesses, and
Right.
all people became worse zombies. My mother, of course, she was terrified of this because she had three little kids to raise on her own, and she neglected herself in order to try to give us better quality of life. But when it comes to living with people with mental illnesses, life is not really good. There's always instability, there's always isolation, there is always an imbalanced kind of lifestyle. My mother, when she had her good times, she did, but my mother was a very violent person, and part of her demons and the monsters that were within her soul and her mind really translated into the way she treated us. I believe that she did the best that she could with the little tools that she had at that time, and I really commend her for that. And I even honor my mother because my mother came from malnutrition, extreme poverty. She was one of these people that when she went to school, it was she was barefooted and she had nothing to eat. So she was malnourished, neglected, abandoned, abused, and this generational trauma kept on going from generation to generation. And needless to say, I when my favorite person in the world died tragically, that I couldn't even I didn't understand grief. I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't feel that I had any support when it came to grief. That really took me into a downhill of low self esteem, low self worth, shame. I didn't feel that I was worth anybody's time. And as I grew up with all this shame, low self esteem, low self worth, I was sexually assaulted for the first time a year after my father died. I was 9 years old. I was bullied by family members and school. So it was like this trifecta effect of every single way that I saw, I didn't feel worthy of anything. And definitely that took me to very, very dark seasons in my life. That it was jumping from person to person. It was about experimenting with drugs, alcohol. I did a lot of everything until the time came to stop feeling sorry about myself and embarking into the most important job in my life, which is motherhood. I became a mother in my early 30s. So before my early 30s, because it was all the same redundancy of I feel sorry for myself. I'm looking at the outside world for approval, for love. I was jumping from person to person. Very, all the instability and abuse that was in the household, I kept on repeating it towards myself and those around me. So when I became a mother, it was time to put a stop to the vicious circle, because it was a vicious circle, a never ending vicious circle. And it was time to think outside the box. It was time to get out of my own bubble of sorrow, pity party, and feeling sorry about myself and my all the calamities in my life. In the midst of all of that, I managed to become a professional. I was a secretary, I was a travel agent. I did many things in my life, but I became a licensed massage therapist. And when I went to school for massage therapy, everything started to shift and to change. That's when I was introduced to alternative health and, of course, holistic lifestyle. And when I am telling you that that was like the big aha moment, I went to school and it has been one of the most important investments in my life, because the most important investment that we do in our life is the one in ourselves. I didn't know that, but I found out through the form of going to school for massage therapy at age 37 years old with two little kids in an abusive relationship. Yes, because the father of my kids, oh, how redundant of me, I was involved in a house with domestic abuse. And he was not my abuser. We were mirroring each other. He had trauma and I came from trauma, and both of us, we were just into this codependent addictive relationship that it only took us to the best thing that happened to us, which was our kids. And I'm very thankful for that. So in the midst of all the darkness, in the midst of all this shame, self-destructive patterns, all of this horrific stuff, two amazing human beings came to this world, and I'm very grateful that I didn't let go of that, because I never saw myself as a mother. So when I became a mom, I went to school for massage therapy. I really didn't look back because I was hungry for more. I wanted to learn so much more about what massage therapy has to do with how our bodies work. And massage therapy is one of these beautiful crafts that has been around since 3000 BC that help us with better quality of life, not only by receiving a massage, but by letting all these good chemicals in our bodies, the levels will go up. We feel better. The migraine goes away. The stressful moment that you were at when you came through that door, you leave through the same door, be feeling happy, feeling better, feeling less stress, feeling less anxiety. And wow, I want more of that. Not only as a massage therapist, but as a receiver as well. I live in a world that it was all giving and giving and giving, because in my culture, the definition of a good woman was the one that would put herself last in the list and everybody will come before her. And I started following many inspirational speakers, and one of them is, and I still follow him, the great Jim Rohn. He was one of Anthony Robinson's teachers, and he said, "Does not get better by chance. It gets better by change." And that clicked. And I said, it's time to embrace change, because we are beings of change from the moment of conception to the moment of our death. We are changing, and it was time to embrace those changes for the better. It was time to get out of that rabbit hole and start looking at the brighter side of things. It was time to finally learn the lessons so it wouldn't be as redundant as it was for decades and decades of my life, and turn it around into something good for the better good of others. And after massage therapy, I'm a canine massage therapist. I'm a holistic life coach. I do fitness for populations 45 plus. I'm a speaker, an educator. I'm a best-selling book co-author. So out of all of these changes that it was about damn time that I did in my life, all of these things just started to come my way. And I said to myself, I gotta do something more than just do all of these things. And my chapter in my book really helped me understand that it was time for me to speak up, but in the broader spectrum. Speak up to the masses, say something to the world. And the publishing company told me, if you really want this compelling story to reach to someone, you have to talk about it to as many people as possible. And that is exactly what I am doing to this day. And not only to this day, David, I'm doing this for the rest of my natural life. And it's a big blessing. And all of these things and all of these calamities, tragedy, feelings of abandonment, shame, all of these things that happens to so many people, and they suffer in silence like I did for 47 years of my life. It was time to say something about it. It was time to say, hey, I'm here for you. Because once we reach out, something good always follow. And there's always people like you, like I, that we are here to help others in the form of this amazing podcast that one person can hear and say, hey, maybe I know this person, or maybe it's not even this person themselves. Maybe I can reach one, two, three, 1,000, 1,000,000. Why not? Why not? These are what these phenomenal platforms are for. And I just decided to jump face first. And here I am. Very grateful to be here.
I love it. So there's a lot there. So where we didn't get to, an ending to one piece of this that I want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So for those of you that are out there that aren't Puerto Rican or like me, Portuguese, that grew up in probably very structured Catholic foundations,
Mm-hmm.
that's a thing, by the way. Catholicism is a thing, and practicing Catholicism is a thing. And early Catholicism, my grandmother's Catholicism, I like to call it, is centered a little bit around shame and quiet. You don't transmit. You don't transmit family problems. You don't transmit family health issues. You definitely don't
Right.
transmit mental health. It's
Mm-hmm.
loco y loca. Period.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Right.
it. It gets one word, right?
That's
and
right.
and and that's the ultimate classification.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a cultural aspect of where Blanca went through that's an extra dynamic. The reason I wanted to highlight that is that I think musicians back all the way back to probably the 20s, but and probably up until maybe the 70s through Vietnam, musicians did a really good job of trying to capture in their music the
Mm-hmm.
struggles of society, whatever was
So true.
current.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And so those songs, I get stuck in with 70s songs quite a bit. Not the late 70s when it gets into disco, but that transition from the 60s into the 70s. And then there's some stuff in the 80s, but for the most part, anything before that. And Elvis Presley sang a song in the ghetto. And what
Mm-hmm.
he talked about was the circular thing in the ghetto, right? The baby's born, the baby becomes a man, or starting to become a man, the baby gets a gun, the baby shoots somebody, then the baby gets shot, and then another
Mm-hmm.
baby's born, and it starts over again. So as you're talking, I want everybody to understand about this cycle, because Blanca, my question to you is, you had two girls, it shook you up enough to make you realize to get out of self-pity and to get past, well, not to get past, because we own our trauma forever, but you went from a victim to an owner.
Mm-hmm.
And you collectively pulled all of this stuff together. You did something that you found your passion in: massage therapy, holistic medicine, these alternative things. You did the work, so you went to school. You went to school on it. You made yourself an expert, which leads to you writing a book and doing what you're doing now. Have you broken the cycle with your girls? The trauma cycle?
Yes. Absolutely. I have a 23-year-old and a 26-year-old. These are amazing human beings. They are professionals. They live their life in their own terms. And I learned through my mother what to do and what not to do as a mother, because the relationship with my mother, unfortunately for her, she really doesn't know a lot about me. And just like you said that you grew up with in Catholicism, my mother is still, because she is still around. She is a Catholic, and everything was about shame and being fearful, and about shame and being fearful, and everything is a sin, and everything is a sin, and you're a sinner, and you're a sinner. I don't know how many times, I think thousands of times in my life, I heard that I was a sinner. And my mother, in her illness, she would say, you are a daughter of God, but at the same time, you're a sinner and you're a prostitute. So it was that this is the definition of somebody that is mentally insane. And I grew up with a mother like that. And when it comes to my kids, they were in their childhood, they were, of course, in the middle of a home plagued with domestic abuse. But when I got out of that relationship, we grew up because we have a beautiful relationship, and it's a relationship based on being open with each other, being supportive, understanding that I went to them and I said, I must confess something to you. First of all, I apologize for my actions. And I explain my apology for my actions. My actions were not the correct ones because I was in a very dark space in my life. If my mother came to me and at some moment she will tell me, hey, I've been dealing with all these monsters within me, please, let's make this work out, I believe that it would have worked out for the better. But since that wasn't the case, I said, I am taking these tools that were never used in my relationship with my mother, and I'm going to turn this around and make this work for the better good of everybody involved. Because our kids, this is the reality, okay? Parents, listen up. When our kids are adults, they are under no obligation to be with you. Okay, no obligation whatsoever. So, what are you going to do to make this relationship get better and flourish and make it like an oak tree, make it like a palm tree, make it flexible, make it strong, make it long lasting? What do? Open communication. Accept that you are human. Accept that you make mistakes. Accept that you mess it up. Accept that you have no clue how to be a parent in many instances in your life. Say it to your kids, and your kids will get it. They will understand. They will say, okay, okay, mom, I got you. And things get better. I have a phenomenal relationship with my kids, and that is one, to me, one of the biggest signs of success that I have had as a woman and as a mother and as a friend, because my two kids, they say that I am one of their best friends, is parenthood. And it's a beautiful thing. And I'm grateful about it every single day. But we got to let our kids be themselves, because we cannot live their lives for them. That only we can only try, but that will never happen. So wake up. And it was a wake up call for me as well, that okay, my kids have come to me. It's like, oh, you remember when I was 14 that you said and did this? It's like, yeah, I remember. Mom, did it change in any way or form? It's like, nah, not really. I'm sorry. And life goes on. But this is, apologizing not only from just saying, oh, I apologize, but the same actions are done. It's like, no, it's about apologizing and changing the narrative. Do yourself a favor and please do that, because if you want a long lasting relationship with your kids, which is as a parent that I am, is one of the most important relationships in my life. You gotta be willing to embrace those changes and keep on growing, because we're all about change and growth. That's a fact.
Yeah, no, I love all of that. And I totally agree. I have two boys, one's 31 and one's 29. And I would say that's kind of where our relationship is because of a level of transparency. The most unqualified you'll ever be to do anything in life is to raise children.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, if you put your resume in front of somebody, they'd say you're not hired. You can't be a parent because
Mm-hmm.
you're not ready. And this is why healthy
Mm-hmm.
environments, Healthy extended families work tremendously. When
Oh
you have
yeah.
when you have grandparents working with, and that works tremendously. When that's damaged in any way, then it's a little more of an uphill fight. No, I'm so glad.
Mhm.
See, breaking the cycle is important because you're not speaking to just Puerto Ricanos or Portuguese people or
Mhm.
any Hispanic folks. You're
Right.
speaking to our African American, Black African American populations. You're speaking to our Native American populations. And it's not just a minority thing. You're speaking to our less privileged white people,
Mhm.
the Appalachian white people. That a lot of this comes with your what you're born into can really start to shape you. And if you get wrapped up in that identity, you'll never get out.
Oh my God, yes,
You'll
absolutely.
never get out.
Mhm.
So when you're raising kids, you can't let them settle on what they are.
Mhm.
They have to aspire to what they want to be. And
Mhm.
this is to your point is it's about change.
Yes.
So you have to. I want you to talk a little bit about because you've done this in probably 10 different ways. I want you to talk about being in a situation and how because pain and fear will keep us in the same spot over and over again. Sometimes that's physical pain, sometimes it's emotional pain, but we
Mhm.
can talk ourselves out of doing anything. This
Mhm.
is why human beings don't like two things. They don't like the way it is today, and they hate change.
Right.
So it's paralyzing.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
when you're up against this, when you're in abusive relationships, or you need to redefine your relationship with your mother so that you can raise your children,
Mhm.
your children needed a certain exposure to your mother, but they needed probably a certain insulation from your mother too, because that
Mhm.
stuff carries over, right? So
Yeah,
talk to me
absolutely.
about that. So go back because you said it, so I'm going to hold you to it now. Because change is not easy. Talk to
Mhm.
me about change and how you see it in this you're in your in your tutelage as you teach us.
Absolutely. My mother, one thing that I got to enjoy tremendously was the relationship with my mother and my kids, actually. I was living in Puerto Rico with my kids all the way till my oldest was 5 years old and the youngest was almost 3 years old. And my mother was taking care of my kids while I would go to work. And it was admirable the level of consistency, love wise, that my mother had towards my kids. And my kids adore their grandmother. My mom is 93 years old. She's got advanced stages of frontal temporal dementia. But when it comes to my kids and their feelings for my mother, it's a whole different ballgame from me and my mother. Is a whole different ballgame.
Mm,
One relationship is a world away from the other, and I'm grateful for
sure.
that. I am so happy that it happened that way. But when it came to my relationship specifically with my mother, it had to be a level of forgiveness, compassion, and empathy for this woman in order for me to move on with my life. Because I would have been a woman in grief, a woman in anger, a woman in hatred if I didn't choose to say, you know what, most of the time, my mother had no idea what the hell she was doing, and she did what she could with whatever she had and everything she didn't actually. So my mother came at one time that she was in one of those lucid moments that she had, and she came to me one time and she said, "Oh, I am so sorry for everything that has happened." I'm like, "Okay, mom, it's okay," but then things just happened and it went straight back to whatever it was. That's why it's like when you're gonna apologize for something, you gotta mean it and you gotta show the change. Okay,
Mm,
because I experienced my mother apologizing and then she apologized to me, and then 3 days later it went straight back to the same bullcrap that happened. So
right.
definitely I had to confront my own issues, understand that I had to stop blaming my mother for everything that happened to me, because we, at the end of the day, are responsible for our actions. We are responsible for our decisions. We are responsible for what happens or it doesn't happen. We are responsible for the changes that we do or don't do. I had a life of redundancy with not changing and fighting change and fighting change, but change never stopped happening. That is the thing. So the only thing that it didn't change at that time was my feelings of anger and grief with my mother. And here we go. I go straight back to the grief of the loss of my father, that I felt isolated, I felt alone, I felt abandoned by my mother because my mother didn't have the tools. She didn't know even how to handle her own grief. How is she going to know how to handle the grief of a kid? All that I heard was she's a little kid. She doesn't understand anything. And that's what I grew up around. So what did that lead me to? Insecurity, low self-esteem, and not feeling worthy of anybody's attention or comprehension or understanding or support. So I come straight back to many years ago. I forgave my mother many years ago, and I'm very grateful that I did. I'm so happy that all I have for my mother more than anything is in this order: compassion and love. That's all I have for my mother, because when I see her the way she is now, it's like I cannot be in grief with this woman anymore. She did whatever she could do. I got to understand that fact. And she never stopped dealing with the demons that she carried inside. She was a prisoner of her mind, for crying out loud, and never having the support of someone, never going to therapy. Oh my goodness, this woman's like, wow, it's pretty remarkable the things that she did teach us, like have respect for one another, being professional, never giving up, not depending on anybody to do things in life. And even though my mother was a yes and no person at the same time because of her mental illness, clearly, if there's one thing that my mother taught us that I will take for the rest of my life, is to never give up. Don't go out without a fight. And that is something, it's like, thank you, mom, because my father, even though he was a hard working go-getter, unfortunately I had my father for a very short period of time in my life, and I still honor his hard work and dedication. But the one person that instilled in me and my siblings resiliency, persistent, and hard work definitely was my mother. And to this day, I will always be grateful to her. I will always honor her on that aspect. And this is the beauty of letting go of grief, letting go of hatred, letting go of blame, letting go of shame, and say, okay, it's time to turn this around for the better good of myself, because I didn't know self love until I started practicing it, until I confronted myself, until I got out of that comfort zone, because we are beings of habit, and and oh my god, we glue ourselves to a habit, which is whether it is the worst habit in the world or the best habit in the world, we glue ourselves to habit. We're beings are habit. And letting go of that habit of blaming others for my actions and welcoming that habit of making myself responsible, facing my responsibility for every single thing I do in life. It was a transition. It took time. It took tears. It took a lot of work and dedication, but I will never go back to where I was. I will never go back to where I was. And I'm very happy and grateful to say, okay, change is a constant, change is good, but you got to work hard for it, because if you don't work hard for things, they will never come your way. And everything in this life is about hard work and dedication. If you want to be, let's say, for example, if you want to go into addiction, you're going to work hard to get your fix. And I have worked around a lot of addicts in my life. I used to do massage for 2 rehab centers for drug addiction and alcohol abuse. And the patients will say, because if there's something that I admire about these places, is that nobody has a filter. They have nothing to hide. There's nothing to hide there. And it's a beautiful thing. And many people from all statures, from every single walk in life, from the poorest of the poor to the most affluent financially ones, they will be, and they will say the same thing. I would do anything to get the fix that I wanted. And they will to go to any, I mean, whatever consequences there is, they didn't care. They wanted their fix. So the same way that people go to whatever extreme there is to destroy themselves. You can go to the best extremes to improve yourself, to make it better, to shine with your own light, to step into your power and show yourself who you really are. And the rest does follow.
Every everything generates energy.
Yes,
And so to hate generates, you have to find a lot of energy to hate.
absolutely.
It takes less energy to love.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have challenges, trauma or whatever that is, when you have trauma and you get down on yourself, or you just make yourself a victim and it's everybody else's fault.
Right.
To go through that takes a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm.
And my own journey, as soon as I learned, it's like a battery, right? As soon as I learned that energy is constant, and
Mm-hmm.
you learn to flip the polarity on it and use the energy in a different way, because you need the energy. Just use
Yes.
it in the right way and take it down the right path. Blanca, in my book, I write that there's three things that never lie. Three things that never lie: drunks, small children,
Right.
and yoga pants.
Amen to that. It's true.
So, but if you look at that, to your point, who are the most vulnerable people? The yoga pants aside, that's part of the joke. But who are the most vulnerable people on the planet? Small children, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have to have care and feeding and nurturing and love and safety and all those type of things, and that requires somebody else to do that for them.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And people that are out of control of their faculties, drunks and addicts, and people that mental health and those type of things. And
Mm-hmm.
the reason that they become brutally honest is they don't have anything else to lose.
Exactly.
And so when we get to that stage, if you're at that stage, or if you're in that stage, or somebody that's in that stage, the only way to break that cycle is that they have to change what you said.
Mm-hmm.
And and
Yeah.
and sometimes that's violent. Sometimes it requires counseling, it requires help, it
Oh
requires
yeah.
extended family and that type of
Mm-hmm.
thing. Can you talk about your helpers in life? Who were your
Yes.
helpers?
Oh yes, absolutely. Though I was in a the last relation that I had with the father of my kids was a very violent one, plagued with domestic abuse. I was in the middle of changes right there, and quietly, because I am a master of silence and secrecy. Yes, I mastered that for so long that it took me chapter in a book for my family members to find out many things that I just kept secret. So I was at this random doctor's office one day, and everything was part of a beautiful plan for me. And I sat down and I see this book that is called The Secret. Out of all books, and I mean, doctors' offices don't even have books anymore. And I said to myself, damn, I have so many secrets that I could write a book about this. I pick up that book, and it was all about improvement. It was all about feeding positivity in our lives. Bob Proctor was there, Jack Canfield was there. It was a whole bunch of co-authors doing The Secret. And from there, it was nonstop. I've been in counseling, psychotherapy, psychiatrist, group counseling, you name it, I have done it. Self help. We have the beauty of YouTube, and even I use YouTube. I use any single platform that would draw me in, that I would say, okay, that I need help with that. I would definitely jump into it, because why not? After having so much lack of help, lack of support, lack of understanding, I yearn the support, the understanding, and saying, hey, as long as you work on these areas, I'll give you the tools, pick him up and use them, because the
Right.
tools are always handled to us. And this is what
That's right.
happens, especially with, I mean, I learned a lot working at these rehab centers. The tools are handled to all of these patients. Unfortunately, the vast majority of these patients, they don't really pick up their tools once they're out of rehab centers, and that's why they fall off the wagon and they go straight back to their habit. But the few people, that small percentage of patients that they really decide to be consistent
Mm-hmm.
with their recovery, they do succeed. they do conquer, they do
Yeah.
change, and they go on to do beautiful things with their lives. And I will tell quite a few patients in the course of this time that I was there, I will tell them, well, I have a story for you. And in my 20s, I did this and that, and I was here and I was there, and was my story. And they're like, well, you look so put together. I'm like, exactly, because we
You
should
built
have,
it.
yes, and we
You
should,
built it. You built it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we should never let our past define what we're going to do for our present or our future. Use it, learn the lesson, look back from time to time and say, do I really want to go back to that? Hell no, I'm not going back to that. But yes, it's time to share the story and let people say, oh, you're so put together. Exactly, that's exactly the point. I didn't know where my life was going 30 years ago. I could have easily been the statistic of this woman was killed and her two kids have no parents. I could easily been the statistic of this woman overdosed and the kids have no parent either. And no, there's a reason why I'm here. And these are things that I appreciate, I honor, I am thankful for every single day. I don't take this lightly because I know where I could have been. I know where I was, but I know where I am now. And it's all about change, and it's all about confronting our demons, and it's all about facing them face to face and looking at yourself in the mirror and say, wow, you have come a long way, baby. And you got a long way to go. Absolutely. So why not do these wonderful things and help other people through my story for the rest of my life? And
Mhm.
I'm only 59. So if I go and if I live like my mom, I will go into my 90s like Bob Proctor did, telling my story and helping others. And then that's a beautiful thing, definitely.
Tell us about the book.
Yes, my book is Impact Leadership with Blanca Rodriguez, and this baby is on Amazon Kindle and paperback. And this is my story of childhood, falling to the deepest of the deep, dark seasons, and still making it to the other side. I am sharing this book with 28 other authors from all walks of life all over the world, and we all share similar stories of falling down, going to very dark places in life, and making it to the other side, and helping. And when we all have this mission in common, is helping others with our story to make a difference in the world.
So we're going to get all that out. We're going to. Do you have a website?
Yes, it's www.woundedhealer.us. And I am on all social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, you name it, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube, everywhere. And my platforms in social media about better quality of life. It's about telling my story. It's
Sure.
about sharing the ups and downs in life, because life is not about rigidly looking for this eternal balance in life. Life is about harmony. And when you have the uppest of the up, it's beautiful. But when you fall to the lowest of the lows, pick up those tools that you know they work and use them. Never forget where you come from. So, yes, definitely. That is very important.
I love it. You're a blessing. I've had really powerful women on the show, you included,
Thank you.
and what I it actually makes me feel good because I was raised by two women. My dad left when I was two, so I lost my father in a different way.
Hmm.
But my grandmother and my mother raised me, and the one thing that I know for sure, being that intimate with that, is that everything that a woman has done in our society usually requires two or three extra levels of effort. It just is what it is,
Yeah,
and
true.
and hopefully we get better at that. And in some ways, women are probably stronger than men in certain walks of life because of that.
Hmm.
But when I see these things, it gives me hope because a lot of times the people that struggle the most with this are young women. And
Hmm.
I did a podcast with another lady today. She's younger, and I said, what would you tell your 16-year-old self or a 16-year-old today? What would you tell them? And she said, just be you.
Hmm.
and I think there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah.
But I want to give you the last minute or so for some really last good words of wisdom for somebody to take away. Um, yeah,
Definitely exercise gratitude. Exercise gratitude for the simplest things that you have in life, like a roof over your head, headphones, clothing, food in the fridge. Be grateful for your bed. One third of our lives is spent in bed, and how
I know,
important is our sleep for better quality of life.
I
Don't
know.
let your past define who you are right now and
Mm,
who you are meant to be in the future. Take those lessons that are coming to you over and over and over and use them for the better good. Make the change, because when we embrace change, everything will follow. And honestly, don't be so hard on yourself. I used to be very hard on myself for the silliest things in life. Don't be so hard on yourself. It will be okay. We are human. And remember, life is about progress, not perfection.